Hi, I'm Jazz from Group Technologies and we're here at the GT Training and Demonstration Facility with Phil Kamp of KLANG Technologies. Now, Phil is KLANG's head of sales, but he also does a lot of coaching and training in the use of immersive monitoring. He's joining us here from Germany, having just completed a tour of live tech demonstrations right across Australia. So welcome, Phil.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. So firstly, for those who are new to immersive monitoring, what is KLANG and how does immersive monitoring actually work?
Well, we call KLANG immersive in-ear mixing. The professional term for that would be a binaural in-ear mixing solution, which essentially emulates our natural anatomy as well as the way that our brain deals with audio in a real-life scenario where we actually hear three-dimensional. So we can localize sounds all around us, above us, below us, and that gives a lot of advantages to the way that we perceive audio. For example, it is very easy for our brain to distinguish between signals and kind of create priorities between signals to figure out what is important, what is not so important right now. It protects us from sensory overload. It gets rid of hearing fatigue. It allows us to listen at lower volumes. And in some cases, you can quite drastically reduce individual signals in a mix. One example would be the click for a drummer, which is usually very, very loud on the ears. So by just bringing the natural way of hearing into the controlled environment of in-ear monitoring, we can just solve a ton of issues which we're not being able to solve before.
Interesting. And you know what, that actually leads us into the next question. Now, I've heard KLANG referred to as a problem solver. So what sort of problems are you running into with typical stereo IEMs that KLANG aims to solve?
Well, there are tons of problems, I would say. I mean, first of all, in-ear monitoring brings a lot of positive things into stage sound because it's very individualized. You know, it's not like with wedges where everyone on stage will hear all wedges and it just raises the stage volume. With in-ears, you have a very, very high level of control over what each individual musicians are hearing. However, just due to the nature of stereo listening, or especially stereo headphone listening, being very unnatural, it often leads to musicians to raising up their belt packs quite a lot in order to, you know, get into a perceived clarity, which is not really there, but they're just trying to do that. It's an intuitive way to do it, so we can't even blame the musicians for it, but it's also not a very good idea. Also, many musicians have the impulse to take one in-ear out and just working with one in-ear, and sometimes even in combination with wedges. Pretty much every sound engineer knows that this is a really bad idea, but musicians do it in order to not feel isolated, not to have a better communication with the audience. And those are things that we cannot really fix in a stereo in-ear mixing. However, as soon as we have a 3D mix, a binaural mix, it feels much more open. And our brain relaxes because it can just find everything in a very similar way to how an acoustic scenario would be. So those are some of the examples. Other examples go a little bit deeper into the workflows with KLANG, where we not only have the possibility to integrate KLANG into digital SD and quantum consoles where the monitor engineers have a very, very high level of control and very high speed of work. But also we can integrate personal monitoring solutions like our KLANG controller or a tablet solution where the musicians are doing their mixes themselves, while the engineers see and hear what the artists are doing. So it just enables a completely new and faster way of cooperating between musicians and sound engineers.
Now, as we know, KLANG is a relatively new technology, but in saying that, KLANG Technologies has grown really, really rapidly, and we're already at a point now of seeing a second generation of processors that are on offer. So what we want to know, Phil, is what's the sort of feedback that you took on board in the design of these new solutions that we're now seeing?
Well, I would say a lot of feedback actually, and most of what we're doing at KLANG is very user-driven. And that's something I mention in all my trainings that I'm doing all over the world. Just get in touch with us, talk to us. If you think that you have a an idea about, how we could do things faster, quicker, easier. If you have special requirements, just get in touch, let us know. I can't always promise that we can integrate every feature request, but the more we know about it, the more we can do it. But back to your original question about the second generation of processors. Just historically with KLANG, we started out as a small startup. Just a couple of crazy Germans on the Belgian border trying to revolutionize the audio world, right? Yeah. And in the first generation, we didn't have the luxury to have a full product line with specialized products. So our aim was to just have one or two products at the beginning that are as flexible as possible, right? And then a couple of years later, we had the possibility to go a little bit wider, right? And we got a lot of feedback from engineers, from musicians, and we knew, okay, we need higher channel counts. We needed, although we had a very low latency already with the first generation product, we needed a lower latency because that was worrying quite a lot of people, especially when it comes to, the signal chains getting more complex and bringing in plugins, which also increase the latency quite a bit. And also to simplify the devices, right? So instead of having one device that could kind of do everything if it's put into the right mode, we wanted to have one device that is specialized for personal monitoring, like KLANG Vokal, right? So it can still be used by a monitor engineer, but that's the specialization of this product. We needed a product that had a very low physical footprint, like DMI KLANG, that we can just slide into the back of a SD or a quantum console with a DMI slot. So there's no external device anymore. That's just the smallest and lightest thing that you can do, especially when we're talking about touring and fly shows, right? And then, of course, we needed to fulfill the requests about high channel counts, especially for the really big touring productions where we're talking about, SD or Quantum 7 level. And we know that the more channels we give to people, the more they're using them. So, of course, most of those consoles are maxed out completely. And so having, for example, 56 input channels on the KLANG side was just not enough to keep up with a Quantum 7 with 256 channels. So that's where we came up with the Conductor, which actually gives us 128 immersive channels at 96K to 16 mixes. So that's quite powerful. So that would be, quite a multiple stack of first generation products to actually keep up with that. And just to circle back once to the point of latency, the latency of the second generation products is at less than 10% of the first generation. So we're talking about a processing latency of 0.25 milliseconds. So that will never ever be any real life issue.
As we've seen from the demand in these training sessions, KLANG has really taken off here in Australia. So for those interested, where can they go to find out more on KLANG?
Well, we have quite a few resources online that everyone can just look up and take a look at. So the first stop would probably be our website. So just www.klang.com. There's a relatively big support section. So if you look for a specific topic, just type it into the search field and you will just get, a number of blog articles, that's how we call them, towards specific topics. On the education side, also on our website, we have quite a few webinars and little, helpful little tips and trick videos that also, of course, are on our YouTube channel. And just going back through those videos on the YouTube channel, I think might be a very, very good resource. As we all have just, gone through this big black hole in time where everything stopped for a while, we used the time to just educate people, right? So we did a lot of webinars, we did a lot of interactive stuff, and most of those are still online. We're keeping them online because it's just a fantastic resource for people to just, dive into the KLANG world step by step.
Definitely. Thank you again, Phil, and bye for now.